Today, we have a very special guest here with us on our podcast. Her name is Beth Ann Campbell. She is from Virginia, USA. She is an author and podcaster, and I'm absolutely delighted to have her here. Hi.
Hi, Tanya. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. So, I am so curious about your work because what I've
Yeah.
heard is that you have been a former paranormal investigator, that you went into houses and you made recordings,
Mm.
you made interviews, you made videos, and you tried
Yes.
to divide between what is real and what is actually just imagination. So, I have a lot of questions around that. My
Yes.
number one question is, what is one single case that challenged your worldview the very most, and why does it stand out to you until this day?
Oh, wow. There are so many, and I know people are probably going to think it's going to be something really wild and scary, but honestly, I probably the first case that I did that really shocked me in my perception of what paranormal investigation was. There was a case we did for a family. It was a large family. I think they had 8 children. And the it was a single mother, 8 children. The children ranged from, like, I think a baby, infant, to 19. And they lived in this old, beautiful Victorian house, and the kids were so scared. There was a 4-year-old, a toddler, who had seen he had been sitting on a couch and he had seen a dark man come out from the wall behind a refrigerator, and he was so scared that all of a sudden, all the other kids are scared, and we actually got called by the oldest daughter. The mother was working overnight, and we went into this house, and they had reported cold spots, they had reported light issues, and a lot of things, and we found absolutely nothing. But what we determined, or what I determined, was this young child, had just learned that his older sister, who was kind of like a second mother to him, had gotten engaged, and she would be leaving the house and getting married. And so I believe that this was a very psychological reaction to his second mother really leaving the household. And it was very sad because they were so scared. I think they were so relieved. But that was the first time that I realized how powerful fear is. And I had gone into ghost hunting thinking it's going to be like the movies. It's going to be ghosts are going to fly out of the walls, and it's going to be really scary, and Bibles are going to be thrown across the room. And it really was a lot more psychological fear, scariness than it was paranormal. So that was probably the one that opened my eyes to that.
Did anything, any kind of entity or ghost or whatever it is, ever follow you to your home? And if that did not happen, what do you think was the best precaution you took so that this does not happen?
That is a great question. And that was something that I was worried about. And the answer is no. But my husband will laugh because I'm very logical and very skeptical, but in fact, as a ritual after our most of our investigations, we would sage ourselves. So we would take a bundle of sage, light it, and just kind of go around ourselves and sort of center ourselves to cleanse ourselves from any of that negative energy. So that was really, whether that worked or not, I don't know, but I did not have any ghosts follow me home. I think another thing too is that I would always kind of communicate, if I would go into like a new home, and just tell anything that's there, I'm not here to hurt you, I'm not here to harm you or kick you out. I just, you stay in your place and I stay in mine. But saging is a good way. Saging is a great way to cleanse any place or person of negative energy. I use crystals I've been trying to do some tarot intuitive investigation about myself, and I use crystals to kind of keep my tarot decks clean, but the crystals have to be cleansed, and I will use sage to do that as well.
As you have mentioned now that you tried to find out something with the tarot cards, was that something about your family's past, about your lineage, or what did you try to find out?
No, honestly, I have loved the idea of tarot and tarot readings, and I've had readings myself over the years. But I recently reconnected with one of my first ghost hunting partners. Her name is Evie, and she's much more intuitive. She can see dead people, and she's a tarot reader. But in talking to her, and I had kind of been starting to get into it just for my own I don't know, just because it seems fun and I want to get more in touch with my intuitive self. So after talking with her, we talked a lot about decks and stuff. I started like really kind of just on a daily basis, really doing tarot readings for myself, just to kind of get in touch with my intuition. And she gave me a great tip. She said, don't look up the cards in the book for a few months. She said, just do your cards, do like a 3 card spread or a just 1 card draw. And she said, just look at the cards and feel and try to interpret yourself. And then down the road, go back and then you can look up and try to interpret them per what the books say and what the card, what each card deck might say. So no, it was personal. It was more for my own intuition.
Okay, so would you say when you get an answer from that, would you say it is only your own intuition that answers through the cards? Or would you say that you maybe tap into the morphogenetic field, that you maybe tap into the collective unconscious to get some information? Or what do you think is the source that provides you the information?
I think it could be a little of both. I'm so new to it, so it's really hard to say. And I have never been like a highly intuitive psychic ability person. So I'm really just getting into this, but it is definitely part me. It is part my narrative. So if I draw a card and I'm asking a question or I have an intent in mind, of course, I think every tarot reader draws on what is what is the person like? What are they getting from them? How do they act? Does it seem like this is makes sense for them? For me, of course, I know my whole history, but I also do before I read myself, I center myself and I really call upon the energy. It's a grounding exercise. So grounding, and I call upon the energy of love of people in my life. And that could be, partly source. If source is out there, I don't know. I don't claim to know anything, but I call upon the energy of my future selves and my past selves and my sisters who are alive and my mother who has passed away and all of those people. So could some of that interpretation be from them and from source, from universe, dark energy, dark matter? I don't know. It could be any of those things. So probably a combination of all of them.
Okay, thank you. So I would like to come back to Evie because you said she was
Yeah.
one of the persons who can actually see ghosts, who is maybe
Oh
a
yeah.
medium even, and you went into different houses to investigate with her, I suppose. Was there any case that stood out, especially where even you could maybe perceive something like that Evie said, over there is a shadow person and you felt a cold spot or anything like that?
Nothing that happened in the moment. And Evie I worked with both Evie with that group, but she had the group that I started with, she and her then husband, and then my husband and I started our own group, and we had a psychic sensitive. So no, and I think part of that was that I was just very closed off, and I was also very I was in my corporate life heyday, and things were like super busy, and I was very stressed out, and I think that sometimes closes us off. But one interesting thing that came out in my recent conversations with Evie, so I'm currently writing my second paranormal mystery that is inspired by these cases that I worked in my 10 years as a ghost hunter. And one of the cases was with Evie. And in the real case, there was a couple with 3 kids, a baby, a toddler, and a teenager, and they moved into this beautiful farmhouse, built in the 1800s, mature trees up on a hill. It was just their dream house. And the woman, the wife, got so scared at one event in particular, but a few other events that we could easily explain, that they moved out of the house. She was so scared. So I was talking about Evie with this about this case, and I had looked at my notes from that case, and I remember nothing. Nothing happened. We found basically nothing, right? On nothing on evidence, very little, few things that could, were questionable. And Evie said, the one thing I remember about that case was there was a little boy presence. And I remember him standing by a window and almost like he was, joking with me, like, ha ha. And then he jumped out the window, not fell, but like, ha ha, I'm going to jump out the window, and then jumped out the window. And I had my heart skipped a beat because in my book that I'm currently writing about that it was inspired by that case, I have a scene where there is a window. There is a boy, a real boy, who wants to go out a window, and a ghost prevents him from going out that window because he would fall to his death. So it's very, very uncannily close. And it's possible the skeptics out there might say, well, you just remembered her talking about it, 15 years ago. But I don't remember it, and I don't have it in the notes, and I don't see it in the report. So I kind of wonder if I wasn't sort of channeling Evie a little bit and what really did happen. Maybe I did perceive it, but I just wasn't aware and wasn't conscious of it, and put it in my book. But it was very, very weird.
Makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah.
Okay, so another question would be, um, many people report out-of-body experiences or near-death experiences that permanently change their lives or their perception of consciousness. Have you encountered any cases that made you rethink your relationship between a consciousness and the human brain?
I would say not necessarily in ghost hunting, but I do know somebody who can astral project, and I do know several people who have had near-death experiences. I asked a friend of mine who had a near-death experience when she was very young, do you think that kickstarted it made happen your future abilities? Because she is an intuitive, she does work with spirit guides. And she said, no, I think I would still be the same. She said, but what it did do is it piqued an interest for her when she had this near-death experience. Later, that made her more interested in pursuing things like spirit guides. So nothing in ghost hunting, but I am fascinated by it. And I do, my friend who can astral project, and again, she's got some psychic abilities as well. I'm fascinated by it. I would love for myself I would love to have some enlightenment about that. But right now, I'm really just focused on just even being more intuitive and getting in touch with source, let alone some of these major things. But yes, I do know people who have both and profoundly affected them.
Because you mentioned that some people have this kickstarting effect after an NDE, I'm not sure if you are familiar with this, but in the files, the E.dot files, there was this part where they said they are doing research, especially with autistic kids, where they take these autistic kids, they do some very ugly things to them, and then these autistic kids are more likely than neurotypical kids to extremely develop psychic abilities, which then is used by the military industrial complex to do things like, stuff that would help them in a war, like remote viewing and stuff. So that this was actually a program that they did on a larger scale. I'm not sure if you're familiar with this text, but if you are, would you think that is possible?
I don't know. I can say this, that we all know, even psychologically, we know that trauma can cause a lot of different things. I have an uncle who experienced great trauma when he was a child, sexual abuse, verbal abuse, physical abuse from both of his parents. And he has developed some skills, just in life skills, that just astound me that somebody could go through that. So we know that trauma can cause people to behave, develop skills, even for such bad things. My friend who can astral project was did some brief studies at Duke University. Duke University used to have a parapsychology department. I don't think they do anymore. But when she was younger, she went to Duke and she actually enrolled herself. And she said that the tests that they did on her were very traumatic, so that she stopped. And in fact, she shut down her abilities for a bit because she just didn't want to do the tests anymore. So, is it possible? I think if you believe that there are people who can perceive things, know things, communicate with things or people whom we cannot see, then of course that is always open to be abused and used for ways that are not for the benefit of society, shall we say. So yeah, I believe that that could happen just from trauma. And you add extreme trauma, like we know torture happens. We know torture has happened to a lot of people, and it has messed a lot of people up. So of course, there's the alternative is it could be used in a bad way.
Thank you. Um, Looking back on your work, which paranormal claims do you now think are most often misunderstood, and which ones deserve more serious investigation?
Great question. I would say we had two things come to mind for things that people experience that of course, I recommend anybody who experiences anything, keep an open mind that it could be something logical or it might not be something, normal. But one of those would be sleep paralysis. So we had probably at least half of our clients reported waking up in the middle of the night and feeling like they were choking, being hit, being choked, sat upon. They saw a dark figure. They were frozen. And all of those are very normal reactions when you're in a sleep paralysis. So it's basically when you go to sleep, your body paralyzes unless you have a condition like when you sleepwalk. But most of us, we would act out our dreams in our sleep. So your body basically shuts down. And sometimes when you awaken, your body and your brain are not in sync. So, and that can manifest in a lot of different things. Now, sleep paralysis events can also be mistaken for sleep paralysis, and they can also be manifestations. But for a lot of people, it's very normal. I mean, I know when I was younger, I used to wake up some occasionally and I would just be frozen and like, why can't I move? That's sleep paralysis, and it can manifest in different ways. The other interesting thing that I discovered on that end is sound. Sound is very, very tricky. So when someone says, I hear a sound coming from that direction, but that direction has maybe thick trees or a wall or something, sound tends to bounce around. And I have been tricked myself many times where I hear something. Even my dogs, once I heard children laughing and screaming. We were in a park and I heard them laughing and screaming. And even my dogs turned around, like thinking that there were kids, but I could see the kids ahead of me. And so, but they were bouncing off trees and stuff. And I had a case once, in fact, my first book, Case of the Demon Drums, there was an aspect of this amphitheater type thick brush that the client in real life had that made us hear sound from a different direction. So I think those would be two things. On the opposite, I think the sleep paralysis is usually it's something normal, but sometimes when you see something like a dark figure, it could be that you are intuitive and sensitive and you are manifesting what you're feeling. So you might be feeling something from atmospheric conditions or the house or a presence, and you manifest, even though that the actual ghost isn't there, but you manifest it, and that could be mistaken for sleep paralysis. So sleep paralysis kind of goes both ways.
Okay, so if you could investigate any house in the world, any house tomorrow, is there a specific one where you say, wow, yes, this is the one that I would like to get into?
Well, it's really, and it's an interesting question because paranormal investigation is a lot of hard work, and the reason that I don't do it actively anymore is because it's late nights, it's equipment, it's expensive, you have to travel if you have children or pets or whatever. So I often say, in fact, I had this conversation with my friend Evie, who again no longer ghost hunts actively, but we said if we had a friend or somebody in our lives who was really like scared and wanted us to help them, of course we would. But as far as it would take a lot. But there is a hotel, a very famous hotel in I want to say it's in Colorado. It's the one, it's called the Overlook Hotel, and it's the same one that was in The Shining, right? A lot of people probably say that. And I've done a few prisons and stuff, but that would be one where if I had the opportunity, I would probably want to go there and because it's notoriously haunted. So
Yes,
I would
I
probably
have
be
seen.
scared.
I've
Yeah.
seen some investigations of that hotel, and they say it's because it's built on a land that has a lot of quartz inside the earth.
Yeah.
And because
Yeah.
of that, it's basically like a vortex that attracts a lot.
Yeah. There are a lot of things like quartz, even water, but certainly rock can kind of hold that energy and record, whether it's residual or it just attracts things. But yeah, the problem with places like that, the tricky part is it's really, really hard to get a clean investigation in a popular place like that, right? Because I've done them. We did Mansfield Prison in Ohio, which is has been on a lot of the ghost shows. And it's fun. I would do it just for the experience, but it's really difficult to get a really clean. There's so much activity. There's other people around, and there's ambient noise. And but I would do it just. Sometimes you have to just do it if you have the opportunity, just for a really good place that is notorious.
And is there any place where you would say that is one thing that I would not even dare to put my tiny toe into, where I would never go because I'm so afraid of it?
Anything that required me to go into a dark closed space, but yeah, I've sat alone in a pitch black prison cell, so there's not that many places. But um if something was like really notoriously evil or physically dangerous, I wouldn't do that. So but not much scares me. Human beings are much more scary than ghosts and
Yes.
entities, but I'll often say this, that if I ever saw like a full body demonic apparition, I would probably relieve myself in my pants. I would probably make a mess because I would be so scared.
Yeah, it always depends on what you encounter and what you see.
Right.
Um, did you ever experience something firsthand that you still cannot explain, even after trying every conventional explanation?
Well, so here's the thing, and everybody wants me to, yeah, they want you to talk about. I saw a full body demonic apparition, and that never happened for me. But again, I said, I think it was closed off. But what did astound me was working with psychic sensitives. So when my husband and I started our own team, we had a sensitive on the team. Her name was Becky, is Becky. She's still alive. And Becky was when she showed up to a little meet and greet that we had and really told us some of this very wild stuff that she would talk to dead people and experience. And I was like, okay, maybe. But there were a couple times when we were on cases, and Becky, like many mediums or sensitives on ghost hunting teams, would not get the report. We would not send her the interview. We would not give her any information about the case. Here's the address, show up. And she wanted to come in blind. And I remember one time she was sitting on the stairwell of this house, this old Victorian house we were investigating. I was monitoring our cameras in our kind of our central station, and she was just sitting on and she went to this one particular step that the owner had told us during the previous interview when Becky wasn't there, that this was a place, and she had mentioned that some woman had been pushed down the stairs by a man, and this happened and that happened. And Becky, during the investigation, sat on the stairs and started crying, because that's what Becky does. She's a sensitive, so she would cry a lot. And I could hear her in the microphone talking about what she was picking up, and it was exactly what this owner had said. Those kinds of things really blew me away because I know that she and people like Evie have a more of an ability, an openness, a receptiveness to experiencing these paranormal events. My goal was to always just to get to the truth. If I could find a logical explanation, I had no explanation for that. How she would have known to that detail everything that happened on that stairwell as exactly as described by the owner, and she had not been there or seen the reports or talked to us about it. That was mind blowing.
Okay. What is your personal perception of God? Would you call yourself more a spiritual person or more a religious person? What is your take on God? Where do you perceive God, if you do at all?
Yeah, definitely not religious. I think organized religion has caused many harmful things in the world. I used to call myself a card carrying atheist because, again, I'm just a very logical person, but I am now, this is why I'm exploring things like tarot cards and intuition, because I do believe that there is a source out there. I don't know what it is. It is definitely not a bearded white man sitting on a throne, judging people, right? It is maybe something that is not really involved in our day-to-day life, but maybe a collective consciousness sort of thing. I'm very intrigued these days by things like dark energy. So from a science perspective and quantum physics, the dark energy we know is out there. It's everywhere. It is, more than half of what we know of. Dark matter is more than half of what we know. We can't see it. It's really imperceptible. We can only perceive it because we know it has to be there, but we can't really see it or harness it or know. And I wonder if that is somehow integrated with consciousness and I do sometimes when I'm doing my meditations or I'm trying to ground myself, I do ground myself, but then I imagine, just infinite number of threads going out from my head to the universe, to I don't know wherever, other planets, dark energy. I don't know. I wish I knew what it was, but I would call myself curiously spiritual.
Great. Do you draw a line? Like, for example, a lot of people say tarot cards, yes, but Ouija board, definitely no. Do you also draw such a line, and why?
Um, the Ouija board, I don't know if I would allow one in my house, but I also recognize that that is probably just a superstition because the Ouija board has gotten such a bad reputation. But I feel like tarot cards are more intuitive. It's me trying to understand myself or maybe someday someone else. Ouija boards is a tool that people use to communicate with things that perhaps they shouldn't communicate. And so I know it sounds crazy, and I'm a skeptic, and I understand from a skeptical point of view, it's just a game. Somebody invented it, it's just a board. But I can't see myself ever using one. I'm not equipped to, if in fact there's any truth to it, I am not equipped to handle whatever would come out of that. So.
Yes.
Yes, there is a difference. I can't explain why. It doesn't make sense, but yes, there is a difference.
Is there anything that is on your heart or on your mind which you would like to tell the entire world? So if you had the possibility to say something and everybody in the world hears it now, what would it be? What do you think is important for humanity to know now or to embody now?
A great question. And I think for me, just even in the context of what we've been talking about, keep an open mind about everything, whether it is people that are different than you, whether it is an experience, an open mind that something that you experience could be logically explained, even as it might sound scary, or that something you experience might be more spiritual. Open mind with people, that the people that you don't know, that you think that you're scared of because they are a certain way or look a certain way, just be question things, keep an open mind, and explore the truth, right? Whatever the truth is, I think it's just so important. I think a lot of us have lost that. We are brainwashed or we are indoctrinated with a lot of things, and this is how it must be. And I say there is no this is how it must be. Even science recognizes what we think is true today might evolve because we have more evidence later. So that's what I would tell people is just explore and be curious and keep an open mind.
So there is a prediction for July 19th, 2026, and it comes from an astrologer in France who is not alive anymore. But he predicted that on this day there will be a very big spiritual awakening for the entire world because there is a certain constellation, an astrological constellation, which he called after himself, of course, the Barbeau basket. And
Nice.
do you think something like that is possible, that there is a certain astrological constellation that can have such an influence on the entire world?
I don't know. I'm intrigued by astrology and I've had my chart read, and I'm not saying that there's not anything to it. I mean, I just put my crystals out under the moon, the full moon, to charge them. But do I think that the alignment of the constellations is going to result in some sort of epic spiritual awakening? No, I don't. I hope it does. I hope that everybody who has, maybe because of the knowledge of it, people will be inspired. But do I think it's just going to snap our fingers and all of a sudden we're going to become, spiritual, maybe even nicer people? No, I don't think that's going to happen.
Well, I love waiting for these dates because there is always a new one, in the spiritual community,
Yeah.
and I
What
love
if it's
waiting
really
for
true?
them.
Yeah.
So it's very, and
Just in case, but
yes,
maybe if it happens.
let's all become preppers.
Right, exactly.
Thank you so much for this interview. This was absolutely enlightening for me, and I think also for my audience. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you, Tanya. You have great questions. These are you came up with some really amazing questions, and so thank you for that. I was thinking of in ways that I haven't even thought before about ghost hunting and spirituality. So thank you, and thanks for the invite. I enjoyed myself very much.
50% ChatGPT.
I love it. Well, good job, ChatGPT.
But the
I use
other
the same thing.
50% from me.
That's all right. You know what? You had the intelligence to go out and say, you know what? What would you ask a ghost hunter? Great questions, Chat GPT and Tanya.